Hello everyone and welcome to BH2 Studios. Today we'll be taking a look at this lens right here. It is the Light Lens Lab 20mm f2.8 9 element, and this is a homage lens. And because it's an homage lens, I thought you're thinking, Taka, did you forget your watch on your? No, definitely not. I think there's a lot of connection between watch design as well as, at least with Leica lens design. Now, if you look at these Leica cameras here, this is from 1968, and this is a modern digital M, but they look so similar. And same with watch design. Is this from 1974 or is this from like last year? Well, this watch is from last year. It's made by a brand called Momentum, and this is called the C-Quartz 30. Now, the owner of Momentum, Simon Pannell, him and his brother used to own a brand called Chronosport, and in the 1970s they came out with the Chronosport C-Quartz 30, and it was made famous by Tom Selleck, who wore this watch in the first 3 seasons of Magnum PI. So Simon decided to make an homage of that original watch and re-release it, I guess it was last year, and this watch is sold well. Now there's 3 or 4 different iterations of this, including a solar powered one, a mechanical version, and part of the success is that it's an homage, right? It just takes you back to the 1970s. It's kind of a hero product. You think about Magnum PI in that era, and so Leica has that same sort of appeal of they have modern lenses and old lenses, but you can't tell because the design is so classic. Old looks new, new looks old, and so that's why I have this watch here, and it reminds me a lot of this lens. Making homage lenses in the Leica M mount makes a lot of sense because a lens like this, so this lens here is an homage to the 28mm Elmarit that came out in 1965. That was a significant lens because before that lens, the 28mm was an f5.6. So it was just the famous Summaron lens, which a lot of brands like TT Artisan are making their own homage versions of those lenses. And actually that lens is also fantastic. What Light Lens Lab does different though is they make a high quality version, and this lens isn't cheap. It's like $1,000 for the black paint version. And so this lens is an homage of that lens. They only made 3,200 28mm Elmarits, and because of that, it makes sense for them to make an homage lens. Imagine that lens, they made 30,000 and you can buy them used for $1,000. Well, why would you buy this lens if you could just get the original Elmarit? So Light Lens Lab is very smart in picking rare lenses that people like you and I most likely can't afford to buy. And even if I had the money, which the original Elmarit, they sell for about 10,000 US used, and so even if I had the original Elmarit, would I go out and shoot with it every day? Yeah, I would, but maybe you wouldn't. So even for those that own the Elmarit, maybe it'd be kind of a fun lens to get. As mentioned, just under $1,000 for this black paint version. If you look carefully, you can see here, you can see brassing already. And I think it's because I'm taking the lens hood on and off. If you're buying a black paint lens, that's probably what you want. And I'm actually, this is on loan, but I'm sure Light Lens Lab knows that when you put a black paint lens out on loan, you're gonna get those little scuffs. But I think it's beautiful. The original never came with a brass body. It was an aluminum body with an aluminum hood. This is an aluminum hood, but it's a brass body, so it's definitely gonna be heavy. We're gonna weigh this a little bit later. I actually think that's a good decision. If you don't like the brassing, then get the chrome version. And so this lens comes as a black paint and chrome, brass body, but like the original, it has the aluminum hood. And I went on eBay to take a look, and this does look almost identical. The lens design is the same. It's 9 elements in 6 groups, but optically it's different. According to Light Lens Lab, they tested the original 28 Elmarit, and they said that on modern digital sensors, it just doesn't optically work that well. A lot of chromatic aberration. So there is one of the elements is the extra dispersion in glass, and so they claim that with that element, and I'm sure they use modern coatings as well, because we'll talk about the image quality later, but it's a fantastic lens. But with that, they say that it's been optimized for using on digital cameras, and I think most people who buy this lens are putting them on digital M's, or you can put them on with adapters, different bodies. And so I think that's actually a good decision. It's not period accurate for those little modifications, but I don't think any of us are complaining, and I don't have the original Elmarit to compare against anyways. Now, these are hand assembled in limited quantities. Beautiful build quality. It includes the lens. It comes with this aluminum lens hood. It comes with the UV filter that's already on here. Front and rear caps. You can see how deep this rear cap is, and it comes with the leather pouch. And this rear cap needs to be this deep because you can see how deep that rear element goes. And so one thing I think it's missing though is that it doesn't come with the lens, the square cap. Now this is my 28mm Summaron, and this has well, it has a chunky lens hood as well, but it comes with this cap here, which is not cheap because I lost one, and so I had to buy that. But it would be nice, maybe someone could just 3D print it, but everything else looks pretty darn good, including that little pin there. That pin lines up to these two little notches, and you can put this lens hood on two different ways. This way here, where you can see it says Light Lens Lab China, or you can flip it the other way here, line up the holes here, and then it just basically says the 28mm f2.8, and it gives you, I guess that's the serial number over there. Now, it's so period accurate that it also comes with infinity lock, and that actually is quite irritating because the throw, you can see the focus throw right here, it goes from 5 meters to 10 meters to infinity. And when you're doing street photography, you're usually kind of lying around in that, let's just see here, usually around maybe 8, 10, 15, 25 feet, and then multiple times it went to infinity lock. But again, infinity lock is a little button here you can release, and so you kind of have to get used to always keeping your finger there. And again, it's not Light Lens Lab's fault because they're trying to be accurate to the original design, and so, but that is irritating having that infinity lock there. Because of this deep rear element here, again, not their fault because this was the original design, you cannot use this lens on the M5 or the CL because it has that little swing spot metering, so that would hit the rear element. But as well, I noticed it does not work on the SL, which is a shame. It just doesn't hit the sensor, it hits that little frame around the sensor. And so if you try to mount this using, Light Lens Lab's own little M to L mount adapter, it won't fit. And so that's a shame. I only tested it on the M11 and the M10R. Now optically, as I mentioned, I tested this against my 28mm Summaron, which I love this lens. This is my favorite. I mean, it's weird. This lens, you know what? Let's just do this now. All right. And let's leave everything on. All right, so let's just put this on here. 300, and I'm not sure if you can see that, 385 grams for this lens with the cap, with the hood, with the filter, and then the brass body. All right, now take that off. 385, is that what I said? This is my Summaron, and put this on here. 287, so it's almost 100 grams heavier. It is unfair because it does have, okay, you know what, let's just be a little bit more fair. Let's take off the plastic cap, and let's take off the rear hood. All right, so now we're talking 255, just the lens by itself, no rear cap. And let's do the same thing with this lens here. Take that off here. Let's take the rear cap, but I will leave the filter on because it comes with it. 316. It's still quite a bit heavier than even my 28 Summaron, and so I don't know what the original weight of the 9-element Elmarit is, but my guess is because the original Elmarit is using aluminum chassis instead of brass, this will still be heavier than the Leica version, but that's fine. Again, with black paint, I want it brass underneath. I don't want it aluminum because I want that brassing, and so I'm okay with the weight, but you do notice the weight right away. So let's just clean this up here. Alrighty, so now I use this lens mostly with the M10R and the M11, and here I do have the Elmarit 50mm, the Elmarit M. So this was a reissue from Leica, and this is another perfect example of Leica reissuing an older lens design. And this lens you can find for maybe $600 to $800 used, made by Leica. And so again, a brand like Light Lens Lab, they're not going to make it because they try to make it as good quality as Leica. But if Light Lens Lab had their own replica version of a Leica lens that's really common and sell for the same price, you're gonna go for the Leica, right? And so it makes sense that they would make homage lenses for rare lenses. And this also reminds me of this Light Lens Lab because of this rear. When you collapse this lens, this also does not fit on the SL. Now, mind you, if I have it open up like this, it will fit, but it always ends up hitting like that. And so this lens also I cannot use on the SL. But let's put this on here. There we go. This is what the Light Lens Lab lens looks like on my M10R, and beautiful, beautiful images. Optically, this lens is a mixture of a modern look with that ED glass, as well as, I'm assuming they put some modern coatings on here. So it renders like a modern lens, but it doesn't have any aspherical elements. It's all spherical glass, and so it still has a bit of that vintage vibe to it. There's no visible chromatic aberration, so there's no color fringing issues. Wide open, the contrast is a little bit low, and then it sharpens up really quickly at f4, so that's kind of what people want. You want that change of character as you stop down. Vignetting, wide open a little bit, but I prefer that, and that's normal even for a modern M lens. My 28 Summaron, I mean, this is not a modern lens, but this also exhibits quite a bit of vignetting at f2, but again, I like that look, so wide open, vignetting, I want that. And then by the time you stop down the f5.6, it's pretty even right across the board. And the colors are beautiful. In fact, in some shots, I actually preferred the color on this Light Lens Lab even over my Summaron, which is very hard for me to admit. But yeah, the coloring is great on this. I took pictures at night on a tripod on the M11, and I'll post pictures here of the pictures I took with this. I also did some street style photography with this lens. Beautiful, beautiful colors. I took a picture of, I did a portrait of someone with a blue mural in behind, and just the skin tones were nice on my subject, but as well, the blues and all the colors pop really nicely. And I did nature photography in the fog, and it just rendered, it didn't matter if I was doing landscape, street style photography, long exposure night photography, this lens could handle it. It just shot like a modern lens. And so because I don't have access to the 28mm Elmarit, I can't really compare everything from build quality to image quality. I don't, it's one of those lenses, I don't have $10,000 for a 28mm vintage 1965 lens, and because of that I don't really know, but I don't really care. It's fun to be able to play with vintage optically designed lenses with a little bit of a modern touch, and I think that's kind of the fun of this lens here. And so the pluses for this: beautiful build quality, has that vintage look to it, which if you like vintage looks, I think if you have an M mount body, you do like vintage looking things, and so that's a plus. Image quality, very little distortion, great character at wide open f2.8. Stop down, it just looks like a modern lens. Great color, low distortion. And the price, for just under $1,000 for a black paint brass lens with all the various accessories, I say this is a good deal, especially if it is an homage to a $10,000 lens. But the negatives, I would say, has nothing to do with the lens itself. One thing I thought about is, who will fix this in 20 years? Like, will Leica fix this lens? Probably not. And so hopefully there's repair masters that are willing to fix this. And is this lens fixable? I don't know, because I don't repair lenses. I don't know how easy it is to swap out elements. And so I hope that Light Lens Lab is still around 20 years from now. As well, in terms of value, you can buy a 28mm Elmarit, not the 9-element, but a more modern version for just a little bit more. Like maybe used, you can buy one for maybe like $1,200 to $1,300 used. And in 5 to 10 years, what will this lens be worth, and what will that Elmarit made by Leica be worth in that same amount of time? So that's another thing that you can think about. But if money or value is not important to you, you just want lenses that have cool character and that can help you make great images, forget about all that stuff. This is different. This is an homage lens. If Leica made an homage to their original 28mm Elmarit from 1965, it would probably still be $6,000 or $7,000 for that lens. And because of that, this lens at $1,000 is still a deal. And it's still unique because it uses a full brass body. It's unique because it uses black paint. It's unique because it has ED glass. It's unique because it's been optically corrected. So optically it's better than the original. So it's a mixture of vintage as well as modern. And so this lens really, it was never meant to be compared to the original. Just like this is an homage watch, is not meant to be compared to the original, but if you're getting that same vintage vibe in terms of the aesthetics as well as the image quality, it can definitely work on a modern M, either M10R. I use it on the M11P. The images look beautiful. So if you are a fan of 28mm, which I am, and you like these homage lenses, especially from a brand like Light Lens Lab, then I think this lens is right for you. And so thank you, Light Lens Lab, for sending this out to me, and look forward to other lenses that you have coming up. Let me know if you have any questions down below, but I will be shipping this back, and let me know what lens you want to see me reviewing from Light Lens Lab. All right, so thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon, and happy shooting.